The stone floor of the training arena was always cold, but today it felt like ice against my bruised skin, a reminder that in this world, warmth was a luxury reserved for those with fur and fury. My name is Lyra, and in the Crimson Moon Pack, I am known by a different title, the Broken One. While the other youths my age were shifting into massive, powerful wolves by their 16th birthday, I remained trapped in a human body that felt more like a prison every day. I am the daughter of the Pack's greatest warriors, heroes whose names are etched into the obsidian pillars of the Great Hall. But to the rest of the world, I am a glitch in the lineage, a weak, wolfless embarrassment. Every morning I was forced into the pits to spar against the strongest recruits. It wasn't about teaching me to fight, it was about teaching me my place. The Alpha's son, Silas, stood over me now, his eyes gleaming with a cruel, amber light that spoke of a beast just beneath the surface. He had shifted partially, his hands turning into talons, his shadow stretching long and jagged across the dirt. I could smell the ozone of his shifting energy, a sharp, metallic scent that usually signaled a predator about to strike. "Stand up, Lyra," he sneered, his voice a low vibration that rattled the very bones in my chest. "Or are you going to crawl for the rest of your life? A pack is only as strong as its weakest link, and you've been dragging us down for long enough. My father says a pack that tolerates a parasite is a pack that invites the rot." I wiped the copper-tasting blood from my lip, my fingers trembling not from fear, but from the exhaustion that reached into my soul. I didn't have a wolf to answer his challenge. I didn't have the heightened senses to predict the way he moved, or the strength to push back against a 300-pound creature of muscle and tooth. All I had was a strange, heavy warmth deep in my chest, a fire that had been smoldering for years, ignored and misunderstood, waiting for a spark I didn't have the words to describe. I stood up, my legs shaking, and tucked my chin. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Not today. Not in front of the 100 wolves who watched from the stone tiers above, their faces twisted in various shades of pity and disgust. "I'm not a link in your chain, Silas," I whispered, my voice surprisingly steady despite the ringing in my ears. The crowd laughed, a hollow, yet ugly sound that echoed through the arena like the rattling of dry bones. Silas lunged. He was a blur of gray fur and lethal intent, a killing machine designed for dominance. I closed my eyes, bracing for the impact that would surely break my ribs and send me back to the healer's hut for another week of recovery. But the impact never came. Instead, the air in the arena suddenly grew heavy, thick with a pressure so intense it felt like being underwater. A sound like a thunderclap echoed off the stone walls, but it didn't come from the sky. It came from me. It came from the marrow of my bones. When I opened my eyes, Silas wasn't standing over me. He was pinned against the far wall by an invisible force, his face twisted in a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. The heat in my chest had exploded, racing through my veins like molten gold, in burning away the pain and the fatigue. My skin wasn't sprouting fur. It was glowing with a faint, ethereal white light that made the morning sun look dim. I looked at my hands and saw that they weren't claws, but they were radiating a power so ancient and so vast that the wolves in the front row began to whimper, their tails tucking between their legs as they backed away from the ledge. I wasn't a werewolf. I wasn't a shifter at all. I was something that had been hunted to near extinction by the packs centuries ago. I was a Solar Herald, a being whose power was tied to the sun itself, not the fickle cycles of the moon. The Alpha, Silas's father, jumped down into the arena, his eyes wide with a mixture of greed and a hatred so deep it made the air around him turn cold. "What is this heresy?" he demanded, his own wolf surging to the surface, his jaw elongating. "You are an abomination, Lyra. You have been hiding a monster inside our walls, eating our meat and taking our protection while harboring a sickness." I looked at him, and for the first time in 18 years, I didn't feel the need to look away. The fire in my blood told me exactly what he was. A small man ruling a small world through fear because he was terrified of anything he couldn't put a collar on. I didn't hide anything, I said, my voice resonating with a power that made the ground beneath us crack, spider webbing out from my feet. You were just too blind to see that the world is bigger than your little pack and your little moon. You called me broken because I wouldn't bow to your beast, but I was never meant to bow to anyone. He shifted fully then. A massive black wolf the size of a carriage, a nightmare of fur and teeth, and he charged with the intent to shred me before I could speak another word. But I was no longer the girl who could be pushed into the dirt. I raised my hand, and a pillar of pure, blinding light erupted from the center of the arena, throwing the alpha back like he was nothing more than a stray leaf in a hurricane. The silence that followed was absolute. No one laughed. No one mocked me. They just stared at the girl they had spent a lifetime tormenting, realizing that the weakest member was the only one among them who truly held the power of the heavens. I walked out of the arena, the crowd parting before me like I was a ghost or a god. I didn't head for my small, damp room in the basement of the pack house. I didn't take any of the meager possessions I owned. I headed for the forest, for the wild places where the pack's laws held no weight. I could feel the sun setting, its final rays feeding the fire in my soul, giving me a clarity of vision I had never known. I wasn't broken. I was just the first of a new dawn. As I reached the edge of the territory, I heard a rustle in the trees behind me. I turned, my palms beginning to glow with a dangerous heat, ready to burn whoever had followed me. It was Silas. He wasn't shifted, and he looked smaller than I had ever seen him, stripped of his bravado and his status. "Lyra!" he called out, his voice cracked and hollow. "Wait. You have to listen." I didn't stop, my pace steady and purposeful. "Why? So you can find a new way to mock me? So you can tell me I'm a freak instead of a failure?" He shook his head, looking down at his hands, which were still trembling. "No, my father, he's already sent a messenger hawk to the High Council. He's telling them you're a threat to the natural order. They'll send the executioners, Lyra. They won't just exile you, they'll erase you. You have to run, and you have to run now." I stopped and looked at him, the white light still flickering under my skin like a caged lightning storm. "Let them come," I said, a dark, cold smile touching my lips. "I've spent my whole life being hunted by my own kind. I think it's time I started hunting back. Tell your father that the next time he sends someone for me, he should make sure they've made their peace with the sun." I vanished into the trees, the heavy warmth in my chest guiding me toward a destiny that the moon could never understand. The broken one was gone. The Herald had awakened, and the Crimson Moon Pack was about to learn that sometimes the sun rises even in the middle of the night, and when it does, it burns everything it touches. The deeper I went into the ancient woods, the more the world seemed to shift and align with my presence. The trees didn't feel like obstacles or hiding places. They felt like witnesses to a rebirth. For years, I had walked these paths feeling like a trespasser in my own home, but now the earth beneath my feet hummed in response to the light within me, a sympathetic vibration that made the very air feel electric. I reached the Whispering Falls, a place forbidden to the pack because the spirits of the water were said to drive wolves mad with their siren songs. To me, it felt like a sanctuary of perfect clarity. I sat by the water, watching the reflection of the rising moon, and realized that for the first time, I didn't feel its heavy, tidal pull. The lunar cycles that governed the shifting, the mating, and the territorial madness of my people meant nothing to me. I was governed by a different clock, a celestial rhythm that was older than the first wolf. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the mist of the waterfall, appearing as if he were woven from the vapor itself. He wasn't a wolf. He was tall, dressed in robes of deep midnight blue that seemed to hold the stars, with eyes that held the calm of a clear midday sky. "You took your time, Lyra," he said, his voice like the chime of a silver bell in a quiet room. The sun has been waiting for its voice to return to this realm for 300 years. I stood up, the light in my palms flaring instinctively, my body tensing for a fight. "Who are you? How do you know my name? I don't belong to any pack anymore." He bowed low, a gesture of profound respect I had never received in my entire life, not even from my own parents. "I am a guardian of the Solar Rite. We have watched over your bloodline in secret for generations, hidden in the shadows of the packs, waiting for the one whose soul was strong enough to survive the crushing weight of a wolf's world without being extinguished. Your pack didn't break you, Lyra. They were the kiln. They tempered you through fire and hate until only the purest part of you remained. They thought they were destroying a weak girl, but they were sharpening a blade." He explained that my parents hadn't been simple warriors of the Crimson Moon. They had been protectors, solar-aligned souls who infiltrated the pack to keep me hidden until my power matured. The weakness the wolves saw was actually my body rejecting the lunar energy, a violent chemical reaction as my soul made room for something far more potent. "The High Council is already on their way," the Guardian warned, his face growing grim in the twilight. "They aren't coming to capture an outcast. They are coming to extinguish a star. A Solar Herald represents the end of their absolute rule. If the packs find out there is a power that doesn't answer to the Alpha or the Moon Goddess, their entire hierarchy of dominance will collapse into chaos." I looked back toward the direction of the pack house, where the torches of the hunting parties were already starting to flicker like angry fireflies. My old life was burning down, and the heat was rising. "Then let it collapse," I said, the gold in my eyes deepening until it burned like a miniature star. "If their society is built on the suffering of the weak and the crushing of the different, then it doesn't deserve the ground it stands on." The Guardian handed me a staff of white ash, tipped with a crystal that seemed to drink in the moonlight and convert it into a steady, warm glow. "Then lead the way, Herald. The world has been in the dark for too long, and you are the only one who can bring the morning." As the first of the executioners, massive scarred wolves with silver-plated armor and eyes devoid of mercy, emerged from the brush, I didn't reach for a blade or a bow. I simply reached for the horizon. I channeled every ounce of the rejection, every moment of the pain, and every year of the soul-crushing loneliness I had felt into a single wave of radiant energy. The forest lit up as if it were high noon, the executioners freezing in their tracks, their predatory instincts overridden by a primal, ancient fear of the light that their ancestors had once worshipped. "Go back to your council," I commanded, my voice echoing through the valley with the weight of a mountain. "Tell them the sun has risen. Tell them the broken one is whole. And tell them that if they ever cross into these woods again, they won't find a girl to bully. They'll find the fire that consumes the night." The wolves turned and fled, their dignity forgotten, their tails tucked as they ran from a light they couldn't bite or claw. I spent the next several days moving through the unclaimed territories, the Guardian at my side, learning the true extent of my heritage. He taught me how to breathe in the light, how to focus the heat in my core so it didn't consume my physical body. I learned that my power wasn't just about destruction. It was about restoration. In a small village of rogues, wolves who had been cast out for being too old to hunt, too sick to fight, or too unstable to fit the pack's rigid molds, I put my hand on a dying elder's chest. The light didn't burn him. It flowed into him like warm honey, mending the bones that the harsh winters had made brittle, and healing the spirit that the pack's cruelty had crushed. Word began to spread through the shadows of the forest. I wasn't just a threat to the council. I was a hope for the forgotten. The rogues began to follow us, a ragtag army of those the world had discarded. They didn't see me as an abomination or a freak. They saw me as their protector. One evening, as we camped near the ruins of an ancient temple, Silas appeared again. He looked haggard, his clothes torn and his eyes bloodshot with grief. He didn't come to fight. He fell to his knees at the edge of our firelight, his head bowed. "They killed my father," he choked out, the words heavy with a reality he never expected to face. The council. They blamed him for letting a herald grow up under his nose. They took the pack, Lyra. They've turned it into a slaughterhouse. They are purging anyone who ever spoke to you, anyone who didn't fight you hard enough in the pits. They are erasing the Crimson Moon to hide their shame. My heart tightened with a familiar, sharp pain. Despite everything, the Crimson Moon was the only home I had known. The children I had played with, the few healers who had secretly given me extra bandages, they were all in the path of the Council's wrath because of me. I have to go back, I said, standing up, the ash staff vibrating in my hand. The Guardian shook his head. It's a trap, Lyra. They are using your compassion as a weapon. They know you won't let the innocent suffer for your existence. I gripped the staff, the crystal at its tip pulsing with a fierce, angry light that matched the fire in my soul. Then it's a trap they're going to regret setting. They wanted to see what a herald can do. I'm going to show them that the sun doesn't just give life, it incinerates. Silas looked up at me, a flicker of something new in his amber eyes. Respect. I'll help you. I know the tunnels under the Citadel. I know where they're holding the prisoners. My father was a fool, but he wasn't a monster like the High Council. Please, Lyra, save what's left. I looked at the boy who had spent years making my life a living hell, and I saw the man he was becoming. Someone who finally realized that true strength isn't about how many people you can pin to the ground. Get up, Silas, I said, reaching out a hand. He took it, and the spark that passed between us wasn't a faded bond of the moon, but a pact of the sun. We marched back toward the Crimson Moon territory, followed by an army of rogues and outcasts, moving not as hunter and prey, but as the beginning of a new world. The final battle wasn't just about my survival. It was about the soul of every pack in the world. As we reached the gates of the Citadel, the moon was full and red, a blood moon intended to empower the wolves for my execution. But as I raised my staff and called upon the sun that was currently shining on the other side of the world, pulling its energy through the earth itself, the red light began to fade, replaced by a golden brilliance that turned the night into a searing, glorious day. "My name is Lyra," I screamed, the sound shattering the stained glass windows of the council chamber. "And the night is over. The sun has returned, and it will no longer be ignored." The gates burst open, not from force, but from the sheer pressure of the light, and I stepped into the Citadel to face the High Council, ready to burn the old world down so a new one could finally breathe. Like this story to help more readers find the legend. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new epic saga of romance and adventure.